Assalamu alaikum. Let's wait 5 minutes if anyone else wants to join. All right. Let's begin today's session. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Today we will be discussing environmental management in organizations. Now, environmental management plays a very crucial or important role for sustainable development. It helps with the implementation of the systems and practices to minimize or mitigate the environmental degradation. If an organization is committing itself to environmental management, that means that they are serious about the protection of environment. They are serious about the concept of sustainability. So we can say that environmental
सलामकुम।
management. Walaikum
सलामकुम।
Assalam. Walaikum
जी
Assalam.
जाहिद बात कर रहा हूँ, कैसी हैं आप? ठीक हैं?
मैं ठीक, आप कैसे हैं?
अल्लाह का शुक्र। अच्छा, ऐसा है कि सॉरी टू फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल आई डिस्टर्ब यू इन बिटवीन ऑफ द ट्रेनिंग। और मेरा
No
ये फर्स्ट
worries.
डे है। मेरा फर्स्ट डे है क्लासरूम में। और एक्चुअली मुझे इस कोर्स के बारे में कुछ भी हाव नाव नहीं है। मतलब पिछले 3 वीक से वी आर अटेंडिंग द क्लास एंड देन वी आर लिविंग ओनली। बट हमें ये एक पूरा कोर्स का मतलब आप लेआउट दें मुझे, एक वो उसका कोर्स मैप बताएं, कोर्स रूट बताएं, और इसके हर एलिमेंट के बारे में एक ओवरव्यू दें, और कैसे इसको स्टार्ट करना है, कैसे एंड करना है, हर एलिमेंट में उसकी आउटपुट क्या है, हमने कैसे असाइनमेंट अटेंड करनी है। वी आर नॉट हेयर टू अटेंड ओनली क्लास एंड लीव द क्लास, खलास, राइट? तो जब कोर्स के बारे में पता ही नहीं है, मतलब उसका मैप भी नहीं है, उसका रूट वे भी नहीं है, तो फिर कैसे हम लोग क्लास अटेंड करें और जाएं?
सर, कोर्स आउटलाइन और जो असाइनमेंट्स की है, कोर्स आउटलाइन हैज़ ऑलरेडी बीन शेयर्ड। जो ग्रुप है हमारा व्हाट्सएप का, वहाँ पर कोर्स आउटलाइन, जो पूरा आपका असाइनमेंट जो आपने प्रिपेयर करना है, उसकी जो की पॉइंट्स हैं हुए में ना पीडीएफ फाइल। सेकेंडली, जो असाइनमेंट प्रिपरेशन है, दैट इज योर मेन पर्पस एक्चुअली। तो असाइनमेंट का जो सेशन है वो हम हर सब्जेक्ट, जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल आज यूनिट है हमारा इन्वायरमेंटल मैनेजमेंट इन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, तो जो नेक्स्ट फ्राइडे होता है उसी सेम सब्जेक्ट की असाइनमेंट प्रिपरेशन का हम सेशन लेते हैं एवरी फ्राइडे। अगर आपने स्केड्यूल देखा हो तो वहाँ पर एक फ्राइडे यूनिट का सेशन है, एंड नेक्स्ट फ्राइडे जो यूनिट ऑलरेडी डिस्कस हो चुका है उसकी असाइनमेंट प्रिपरेशन का जो है वो मिस आयशा सजाद जो है वो एक्सप्लेन करती हैं कि आपने किस तरह से असाइनमेंट प्रिपेयर करनी है। और जो मैं हूँ वो आज की जैसे सेशन के बाद मैं पूरा मटेरियल, जैसे पीडीएफ्स हैं, जो हमारे पास रिसर्च आर्टिकल्स हैं, जो हमारे पास बुक के चैप्टर्स हैं, वो सारे के सारे मैं व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप में शेयर करती हूँ, जो आपके लिए असाइनमेंट बनाने में हेल्पफुल होंगे।
देखें, जो आप कोर्स की आउटलाइन की बात कर रही हैं, अलॉट ऑफ कोर्स आउटलाइन इट इज अवेलेबल ऑन गूगल। गूगल करें, आपके सामने सारी चीजें आ जाएंगी। हमें कोर्स आउटलाइन लेने का मतलब ये नहीं है कि बस हमने देख ली। हमें अंडरस्टैंड कौन करवाएगा? हमें तो पता ही कख नहीं है।
सर, किस किस्म की अंडरस्टैंडिंग? जैसे सेशन है वो है ही आपका के कॉन्सेप्ट्स जो आपके कोर्स आउटलाइन में है, वो कॉन्सेप्ट की अंडरस्टैंडिंग के लिए हमारे सेशंस होते हैं।
हम्म।
आई होप सर इट हेल्प्स के सेशंस हम लोग ले रहे हैं, उसके अंदर हम लोग कॉन्सेप्ट्स डिलीवर कर रहे हैं कि कौन कौन से, मतलब कोर्स आउटलाइन को एक्सप्लेनेशन करें कि व्हाट इज दिस एंड व्हाट इज दैट। और जो असाइनमेंट प्रिपरेशन है वो नेक्स्ट फ्राइडे डिस्कस हो जाती है कि किस तरह से क्या चीज़ आपने प्रिपेयर करनी है, किस तरह से लिखना है सारा जो
अच्छा, ये
क्वेश्चंस
देखें,
वगैरह।
असाइनमेंट तो बन ही जाएगी, वो तो कोई इतना बड़ा इशू नहीं है। इशू ये है कि हमें एक कोर्स का ओवरव्यू तो दिया जाए। मतलब लेट्स से मेरा फर्स्ट डे है, अब मुझे पता ही नहीं है, मैं बैठ के चुप करके इधर से चला जाऊं तो फायदा क्या है? मार्केट में बहुत से ऐसे लोग हैं जो ऐसे मतलब करवा रहे हैं, लेकिन हमें कुछ अंडरस्टैंड तो करवाए ना। लेट्स से फॉर एग्जांपल मेरा फर्स्ट डे है, मुझे कोर्स का आउटपुट दें, मुझे ओवरव्यू दें कि जनाब ये कोर्स है, ये एलिमेंट्स हैं, ये टॉपिक है, ये ओवरव्यू है, ये इसकी सर्टिफिकेशन है, ये इसके क्राइटेरिया है, ये इसके क्रेडिट पॉइंट है, यहाँ पे जाके इसकी सर्टिफिकेशन बॉडी है, ये आपके एडवांटेज, ये प्रोज एंड कॉन्स है। तो जब पता ही कुछ नहीं है तो मेरा क्लास अटेंड करने का फायदा क्या है?
सर, यहाँ पर हम OTHM लेवल 7 डिप्लोमा की क्लासेस या सेशंस वगैरह ले रहे हैं, जो बेसिकली रेगुलेटेड क्वालिफिकेशन फ्रेमवर्क है। और ये जो है ना, मतलब इट्स एक्चुअली और ये हमारा जो डिप्लोमा है वो किसके ऊपर है, ऑक्यूपेशनल हेल्थ एंड सेफ्टी, जो औशास आपको पता होगा। हम लोग यहाँ पे जो सेशंस ले रहे हैं वो सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट के ऊपर बेसिकली हमारा डिस्कशन होती है कि सस्टेनेबिलिटी का कॉन्सेप्ट, हमने पहला पहला जो हमारा सेशन था वो सस्टेनेबिलिटी का कॉन्सेप्ट था कि फंडामेंटल्स कौन से हैं सस्टेनेबिलिटी के, ये आपको हमारे इसी पेज के यूट्यूब फायर सेफ्टी मैनेजमेंट इंस्टीट्यूट के यूट्यूब के जो हमारे पास पेज है उसके ऊपर आपको उसकी रिकॉर्डिंग मिल जाएगी कि सस्टेनेबिलिटी का प्रोसेस क्या है, ब्ला ब्ला। देन सेकंड हमारा लेक्चर हुआ था कि हम लोगों ने एनर्जी ट्रांजिशन के ऊपर डिस्कस किया था कि किस तरह से सस्टेनेबल वेज में हमारे पास रिन्यूएबल नॉन रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी किस किस्म की है, और क्या क्या किस तरह से जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस हैं वो उनको रिन्यूएबल्स की तरफ क्यों जाना चाहिए, कौन सी एनर्जी के ऊपर क्यों जाना चाहिए, यही वाले हमने कॉन्सेप्ट डिस्कस किए थे। और जो हमारा आज का सेशन है, जैसे मैंने सेशन के स्टार्ट में बोला है कि वी विल बी डिस्कसिंग अबाउट द इन्वायरमेंटल मैनेजमेंट इन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, कि इन्वायरमेंटल मैनेजमेंट क्यों नेसेसरी है ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस के लिए।
सही। तो ये चीजें जो आप बता रही हैं कि एलिमेंट वन में हमने ये डिस्कस किया, टू में ये डिस्कस किया, ये चीजें कहीं लिखी हुई है, रिटन डाउन है कि जनाब वहां से हम जाके इसको देख सकते हैं कि हम किस मैप पे चल रहे हैं?
जी सर, वही बात के जो पीडीएफ हमारा शेयर हुआ हुआ है OTHM 7 का ग्रुप में, व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप में, जिसमें हमारी पूरी कोर्स की आउटलाइन लाइक सब्जेक्ट वाइज यूनिट 1 में फंडामेंटल ऑफ, फॉर एग्जांपल फंडामेंटल ऑफ सस्टेनेबिलिटी थी, तो उसमें आपके पास डिटेल में बताया हुआ है कि कौन से कॉन्सेप्ट्स हम लोग डिस्कस कर रहे हैं, कि कौन से कॉन्सेप्ट्स आप लोगों के लिए जरूरी हैं। ईच एंड एवरीथिंग इज मेंशन्ड ओवर देयर।
ठीक है, ठीक है। तो वो
अगर
लेट्स
आपको
से।
अभी थोड़ा सा जी, अगर आपको थोड़ा सा हो रहा है तो आफ्टर दिस सेशन मैं या जो फायर हमारा सेफ्टी मैनेजमेंट इंस्टीट्यूट है ये ग्रुप में दोबारा से शेयर कर देगा, जो हमारा कोर्स का पूरा पीडीएफ है, आउटलाइन है, उसके अंदर डिटेल्ड सब्जेक्ट्स सॉरी लिखे हुए हैं कि किस सब्जेक्ट में, फॉर एग्जांपल आज की जो हमारे पास इन्वायरमेंटल मैनेजमेंट इन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है तो इसके अंदर इसके सब पार्ट्स कौन से हैं, पार्ट्स कौन से हैं, वो इस तरह की जो पूरी डिटेल है कि हम कौन से कॉन्सेप्ट्स डिस्कस करेंगे, वो सब कुछ है वो शेयर हो जाएगा दोबारा से।
ठीक है। अच्छा, ये बताइएगा, लेट्स से आपने कहा जी हम आज थर्ड एलिमेंट वी आर गोइंग टू बी डिस्कस राइट नाउ। तो
या
अब ये है कि मैं तो नया हूं, मैं थर्ड एलिमेंट से शुरू कर रहा हूं। जो मेरे टू पहले वाले जो एलिमेंट थे वो स्किप हुए हैं, तो उनका क्या स्केड्यूल होगा? और सेकंड थिंग कि मुझे कैसे पता चलेगा कि लेट्स से आपने जैसे बताया कि हमारा फर्स्ट और सेकंड एलिमेंट डिस्कस हो चुका है, वो ओवरव्यू मुझे आप या तो मैनेजमेंट की तरफ से शेयर होना चाहिए बिफोर द कोर्स। अब जब एक बंदे को पता ही कुछ नहीं है, मैं मतलब आपकी प्रेजेंटेशन देखूं और बस स्किप कर दूं क्लास?
हाँ नहीं सर, जैसे मैंने पहले भी बताया कि जो हमारे सेशंस हैं वो रिकॉर्ड हो रहे होते हैं, और वो रिकॉर्डिंग इन द सेम डे या नेक्स्ट डे जो है वो यूट्यूब पे, जो हमारा फायर सेफ्टी मैनेजमेंट इंस्टीट्यूट का यूट्यूब का जो चैनल है वहाँ पर शेयर हो जाते हैं, तो आप वहाँ से रिकॉर्डिंग सुन सकते हैं इजीली।
सही। रिकॉर्डिंग सुनना मैटर नहीं करता मैडम, रिकॉर्डिंग तो दुनिया भर की यूट्यूब पे पड़ी हुई है। चीजें ये होती हैं कि अगर हम यहाँ पर हमारी क्यूरीज हैं तो हम इन बिटवीन ऑफ द ट्रेनिंग वी कैन रेज द क्यूरीज एंड यू नीड टू बी एड्रेस। तो फिर चीजें अंडरस्टैंड होती हैं कि हम किस सिमत में जा रहे हैं, राइट?
जी जी
एनी हो,
सर।
मैं बात करूंगा मैनेजमेंट से आपके इंस्टीट्यूट के। वी कैन स्टार्ट राइट नाउ। थैंक यू, थैंक यू
ऑलराइट
फॉर योर टाइम।
ऑलराइट ऑलराइट। Okay, let's resume today's session. As I was already discussing that the environment management in an organization, it has a very crucial or important role for the sustainable development, uh, because it helps with the implementation of the systems or practices to minimize the environmental degradation. Because uh, through the unit 1 we have been discussing that we need to manage the environment, because why? Because the environment comprises of all living and non-living components, obviously, that are necessary for your survival. For example, we have resources like renewable resources, we have non-renewable resources, and industries are extracting the raw material from those renewable or non-renewable resources. For example, you're getting energy sources from the environment, you are getting raw material from the environment, you are getting metals, you are getting everything from your environment. So it is necessary to manage the environment for the sustainable concept of sustainable development. And the concept of sustainability is what we are thinking about our future generation without disrupting the needs of today's. Like, we are not sacrificing our own needs, but we are also not wasting resources, so that our future generations can also get benefit from these resources that are present on the earth. That is why the concept of environment management is important. And the definition of environmental management systems is actually what set of processes and practices that enable an organization to reduce its environmental impacts and increase the operating efficiency. Obviously, if an organization is trying to manage the environment from which it is extracting resources from, obviously it would, in a long term, would benefit that particular organization. So simply, environment is what our source. It is a source of all of the resources. And I believe and I think that we are also thinking that it's also the same for those resources, because we are dumping everything haphazardly without treatment onto the surroundings. That is why the management is essential. Now, some of the principles of the environmental management are: number one is precautionary principle. It's a principle that is applied where integrity of the people is concerned, like where there are threats to serious social impact. For example, an activity of an organization has for example, an activity of an organization might have an impact on the local community. So that is actually the precautionary principle, that if an activity has an impact on the local community or the people living nearby, for example, it's a petroleum industry, for Sir Muhammad Khalid, if you don't mind, please mute your mic. Okay. Now, so the concept of precautionary principle is that it needs to be mitigated before the impacts reach to a level that they cannot be mitigated. Similar is the case with uncertainty principle. You might be aware of the uncertainty of Heisenberg principle, that you're not certain. We cannot be certain that. And in terms of social concept, we can say that the uncertainty of understanding of social processes due to their ever-changing nature. Actually, the environment, the social environment or the natural environment, it is changing continuously. So the uncertainty principle actually deals with that it is difficult to understand the environment, it is difficult to understand the social environment because it is changing continuously. Then we have intra and intergeneration equity. As I already mentioned, that the concept of sustainability is what? That we are not sacrificing our needs, but we are also not wasting them. We are using our resources that we are obtaining from the ecosystem in a way that our future generation are also able to use those resources. For example, take the example of the water, that obviously we need water to live. I'm not saying that concept of sustainability says that do not use water so and save it for the future generation. No, the concept is actually what? That we need to use water in a way that it is fulfilling our need as well as it will also fulfill the needs of our future generations. So this is actually the inter and intra generation equity. That is one of the principle of environmental generation environment management. Then we have polluter pay principle, which states that the consequences of the impact must be compensated by the party that induced it. For example, if the organization is creating a high level of carbon dioxide, for example, then it is polluter pay principle states that it is the duty of that particular organization to pay for the prices for the carbon dioxide. Either it is in a form of taxes, or either it is in a form of fines, or it is in a form of, like, for example, some instrument or processes that are helping to mitigate that carbon dioxide being emitted. Then we have prevention principle, that restore and rectify effect immediately after the activity. It would be cheaper and effective, obviously. Now, what are some aspects of the concern, that important aspects of the concern? Why do some environmental effects or concepts that essentially require management for the mitigation? Let's discuss some of the most important aspects that require mitigation or minimization, or that require the organization to go for the environment management. First is the global warming and climate change, the most common and the most important or essential aspect. Now, global warming is most, I already mentioned, that prominent concept, and you might probably be aware of it, right? So basically, what it is actually the warming of the temperature all over the world. The concept is basically due to greenhouse gases that accumulate. Greenhouse gases are what? Like carbon dioxide, like methane, like chlorofluorocarbons, like these gases, and also water vapor as well. Now, due to greenhouse gases that accumulate in the atmosphere, and they are actually doing what? Trapping heat from the sun. Now, one of the most important aspect or important effect is from the global warming is raising sea level. Why? First of all, the glaciers are melting because of the global warming, because of the increasing or elevating temperatures. The glaciers all over the world are melting at a rapid speed, and which is causing what? Adding water to the oceans. Obviously, all of that water ultimately goes into the ocean. Secondly, because of the warming temperatures, the volume of the water, due to rise in global temperature, the volume of the water is expanding. So that is the reason that the sea levels are raising. And according to the estimate by the United Nations, their climate change agency, the global average sea level has risen about 8 to 9 inches, that is 21 to 24 centimeters, since 1880s, that is since industrial revolution, since we have started producing the greenhouse gases. And in 2022, the global average sea level set actually a new record high, that was a 101.2 millimeter. And in the graph, you can see that it has been estimated that the global sea levels will rise up to 6 feet or 7 feet up till 2080 or in the next century. And according to the estimate, even if we are, for example, in the US, if there is a significant reduction in greenhouse gases, even in US, the sea level in 2100 would be 2 feet higher than it was in 2000. That means that even if we are reducing the greenhouses gas, the effect would not be immediately mitigated or minimized. So it is quite alarming. Now, second is flood. One of the major concern. Let me take example of Pakistan, because we have been facing floods since 2022, rapid floods actually, severity in rainfall and unusual monsoon patterns, etc. Okay, in the slides or in the screen, you are seeing a satellite image for the 2022 flood by the US Geological Survey. And as you can see that in one image, that was a normal aerial view or the satellite view of the area, and in the next image, you can see that all of the area is filled with water. This was the area that was affected by the flood, and according to estimate, 33 million people were affected, and $40 billion economic damage was caused. And obviously flood has many negative impacts. For example, public health, like obviously flood cause inadequate sanitation, that is causing the breakout of diseases, and the excess lake and lack of access of clean water, medicine. And WHO measured that in mid-October, during that flood in 2022, there were cases of about 100,000 cases of malaria in Pakistan in the on those flood affected areas. Then we have water security, obviously, because of the flood, because of the unclean sanitation. We obviously access to the clean water is restricted. Then we have food security. Obviously, the flood has affected the agricultural land, like about, according to International Atomic Energy Agency, about 4 million acres of the crops, they were destroyed during that flood time, which is a big crisis. And energy access, obviously, already we are already energy deficient, and hydropower, for instance, is an excellent source of power, but because of this flooding, because of this unusual monsoon rain patterns, this source of energy is also disturbed. And also threat to the national security. For example, you must be aware that because of the corruption, the foreign agencies are resistant to provide monetary aid, and also all of the forces being busy in the flood areas. Pakistan is a nuclear country. Obviously, we are leaving our borders to help the flood affected areas. So it is also these natural disasters also threat to the national security. The next main concept or effect is drought. I will again take the example of Pakistan here, one of the most effective countries by the climate change, hence susceptible to climate patterns. Now, rapid melting of the glaciers and unusual rains during monsoons are not only causing flood, but they are also causing drought, actually. And according to United Nations, the Pakistan is going to face even major water crisis in future. Now, drought is what? It's actually the water insecurity. It is actually the deficiency in the availability and access of adequate, safe, and clean water. We have much water in the flood, but it is not sanitary to use. It is not clean. Hence, we cannot use them. So we can say that we are deficient in water. That is also the type of drought. So, now, drought is actually different from the other natural disaster. For example, the effects of the drought actually accumulate slowly over a considerable period of time, and they linger for years even after the termination of the event. Because of this, the drought is often referred as a creeping phenomena, because it comes to you slowly, it affects to you slowly, and the effect goes away in the same manner, in a very slow manner. Now, the impacts of the drought are less obvious and are spread over a large geographical area than the damages of the flood, than the damages of the other natural hazards. Okay. And in Pakistan, according to the studies, according to the links that I have provided there, that with the current, we have 207 million people will face absolute scarcity of the water by 2025. It has been estimated. And in turn, nearly 1,500 children die every year due to drought, obviously due to malnutrition and insufficiency of the washing facilities. And also, you might have heard that the groundwater level in Lahore is decreasing very rapidly. Also, it is also affecting the hydroelectric power generation, and obviously Pakistan being an agriculture country, it is also affecting our production rate. And the overuse and water scarcity and water agriculture pesticide is also affecting the quality of the water that is being provided to the people. So obviously food security insecurity is leading to compromised nutrition, poor physical and mental health, such as anxiety problem, depression, chronic diseases, etc., etc. So these are all the consequences of the drought. And what is causing all this drought is actually the climate change. The next important effect is deforestation and biodiversity loss. Now, the deforestation, as you all know, that it is actually the cutting down of forest. And what is the reason for cutting down all those forests, which are very important for us, are actually what? Agricultural land. To gain agricultural land, we are cutting down the forest. In 2022, it was estimated that 16 million acres of the forest were lost because of this agriculture land, to get the agriculture land. And other causes are also because we need logs, we need wood, we also need livestock grazing, and obviously we are constructing the infrastructures like roads, like building, we're also destroying the forest. Now, the Amazon, the world's biggest rainforest, has estimated amount of 15,000 species of trees, about 3,000 species of the fishes in their river system, and 1,300 species of the birds. But 17% of it has been deforested. That means that all those species, either they had to migrate from that area, or they die because of the lack of the habitat. And so this is a very major concern, because those species could be a source of, for example, those fishes could be a source of food for many, many, many people over there, could be the source of livelihood for the many people over there. So, and according to the World Life WWF, that forests provide about 86 million green jobs, and the resources from the forest, like food, we are getting food, we are getting fuel, and obviously we are getting the people's livelihood. They earn money from these forests or the biodiversity, and decrease in or this biodiversity, or because of the deforestation, all of these people are being affected. Then we have air pollution. Air pollution, we are very aware about this, that air pollution is what? The contamination of the indoor or outdoor environment by any, it could be chemical, it could be physical, or could be biological agent. Now, why air pollution and climate change are related? They are actually very closely related. That because the air pollution, as I already mentioned, the climate change has been caused by the gases like carbon dioxide, like methane, like water vapors, etc. So these are actually present in the air. So that means that the air pollution is actually the major cause of the climate change. Like, for example, carbon black, methane, like tropospheric ozone. Troposphere is the area where our planes fly, I would say. No, above it, where the ozone layer is present. And the aerosols, the tiny, tiny, minute particles that we are releasing into the environment from our spray bottle, for example, like we use body spray, these are actually aerosols. So they are what? Affecting our environment, they are affecting the climate. As I already mentioned, that carbon dioxide and these gases are actually trapping the sunlight, causing the earth's surface to heat. So the temperature of the earth is increasing, so which is causing ultimately what? Melting of the ice, icebergs, glaciers, raising seas levels, etc. Now, the impact of the air pollution on the human beings or the ecosystem or the environment are: number one is the particulate matter or the aerosols, this tiny, tiny, tiny particles of for example, could be carbon, could be metals, could be stuff like that. It is not only causing the global warming, in some areas it is causing the cooling effect. How? The aerosols or the particulate matter, they are actually very tiny, as I already mentioned, they are very small in size. So they are doing what? They are dissipating the sunlight. The sunlight, when falls onto them, because they are present in the air, when the sunlight falls onto them, it is dispersing or dissipating the side, and the sun and some of it reflected back into the space. So reflection of this sunlight back into space is causing cooling effect of the global temperature into the some areas of the world. Now, GHG, greenhouse gases, obviously, I already mentioned that they are causing the global warming. and this global warming is causing flood, etc., which is actually what causing outbreaks of the diseases. And ozone layer, you must be aware about the ozone, that it is present in the stratosphere. It is protecting us, it is protecting our skins, it is protecting us from the diseases, from the harmful radiations of the sun, the UVA, UVB radiation, it is absorbing them. So the ozone also act as a pollutant because we are also releasing ozone uh, where it shouldn't be present. For example, the place the ozone should be present is in the upper stratospheric layer, or in that layer, but we are releasing the ozone in the troposphere where we are living on the land. So it is causing biochemical, morphological, or functional or immunological disorders in the human beings. And the last major effect is solid waste. Now, solid waste includes obviously everything solid. It could be solids, it could be semi-solid, non-soluble materials like liquids in the container. It could be agriculture refuse. It could be demolition waste. It could be industrial waste, mining residues, garbage, sewage sludge, etc. And it is basically most of the solid waste is dumped on the land without treatment. For example, we have according to the environmental protection department, that in Pakistan solid waste generation ranges from 0.283 to 0.612 kg per capita, like per person per day. And the waste generation growth rate is 2.4% per year. And it is causing what? Health hazards, obviously. How that those the solid waste consists of many harmful agents, like for example we have metals. For example, we have lead, we have arsenic in the solid waste, and ingestion of this or through or inhalation of these particles is causing health related problem. Also, it is also causing groundwater pollution. How? Because of the concept called the leaching. Water has a capacity to dissolve everything, like almost everything. Your water is a universal solvent, right? So the solid waste, when it comes in contact with the water, either in a form of rain, either in a if either it is being dumped into the rivers or in any form, it would leach, it would dissolve metals, it would dissolve or leach the toxic chemicals, like for example from a plastic wrapper, or maybe paint, or maybe plastic toys, from anything that is present in the waste, that it would leach down in with the water droplets that are actually going down into the groundwater. You are aware that when rain occurs or happens, the water percolates down into the ground, and then um, fulfill the groundwater level, or it gets incorporated into the groundwater, right? That is how the water is replenished, the groundwater is replenished. So this percolating rainwater takes the metal particles, or the toxic organic compounds from the plastic waste, for example, with it into the groundwater, and that is how the groundwater pollution is happening. And also the air pollution. For example, we are burning the plastic bags, uh, because we are not properly treating them, we are openly burning them, and the compounds that are released by the burning of those plastic bags are causing the air pollution. Now, let's discuss some of the most prominent environmental management standards. Number one is obviously the most obvious one is ISO 14001. What it is, an internationally agreed standards, and it sets out requirements for an environmental management system, and it helps organization improve their environmental performance. It is actually internationally agreed standard, as I already mentioned, and it helps the organizations to demonstrate compliance with the current and future regulatory requirements. For example, it has whole mechanism. ISO 14001 has whole mechanism of how to manage the environment, how to mitigate or minimize the effect of the effects of the processes, effect of the practices that organization is doing, and how does it help? It demonstrate, it tells or demonstrate or shows or gives the guidelines to comply with the regulatory requirements. It is also increasing the leadership involvement, because some of the clauses require the organization to involve each and every leadership, each and every employee, and to engage into the sustainable practices. It is also obviously improving the company's reputation. Obviously, if a company is complying to the environmental management system, or it is following the laws or legal requirements for the environment regulations, or for the mitigation of the processes or the harmful effects, obviously their reputation would improve, and the stakeholders include all the people, like for example consumers, could be the business partners, or could be the government. It would obviously build up the confidence of the stakeholders to the for that particular organization. Now, the organization following ISO 14001 uh, is also providing competitive and financial advantages through improved efficiency. Obviously, for example, if a system is causing or creating too much of the carbon dioxide, and it would not only it is not actually only reducing the air quality of the organization or the nearby areas, but it is also not very efficient, or it is the system is would not be very efficient, fuel efficient. So the organization that is working for the environment management, or they want to increase the sustainable, or they want to build up the sustainable practices in the organization, obviously they would innovate new processes or new strategies, or maybe the new machinery, or build up new concepts to mitigate that particular problem of carbon dioxide emission. So they would not only decrease the carbon dioxide emission into the atmosphere, but also it would also result in, for example, fuel efficiency of that particular machine would be actually reducing the cost of that particular process. And obviously ISO 14001 encouraged better environmental performance of the suppliers by integrating them into the organization business system. As I already said, that the ISO 14001 um, make it essential to involve every person involved, every leadership, every employee, and every stakeholder. The involvement of every stakeholder is necessary according to the clauses of 14001. So it is also that means that it is also encouraging a better and competitive and a peaceful environment in an organization, which is obviously beneficial in long term. This is a list of ISO 14000 family of standards. If you are interested, you can search for all these, because of the shortage of time, I'm unable to explain all of these. These are actually the family of the standards of 14000. These are describing those particular areas. For example, we have 14004 2016. It is related to the environmental management system. It provides general guidelines on the implementation, and the 14006 is providing guidelines for the incorporating eco design. So all of these clauses, or all of these components of the ISO 14000 are providing guidelines for a particular purpose, or a particular operation, or a particular reason. The second one is Green Dragon Environmental Standard. It is intended to provide organization what the elements of an effective environmental management system. Obviously, it is also a series of guidelines that is dedicated to provide elements of effective environmental management system, and it also provides a system to reduce the organization environmental impact and protect the environment. And this standard is awarded to the organization that can demonstrate the effective management system. Only those organizations would be awarded with this certification if they are showing their commitment, and if they are demonstrating or showing the effective environment management system. And after getting the positive certification or accreditation from not accreditation, sorry, positive response from the Green Dragon, obviously the organization can go for the ISO 1401, the most important or most essential certification that organization can get, because obviously it is showing commitment or demonstrating the effective environment management. Now, the levels of the Green Dragon involves: level one is commitment to the environment management, and then number two is understanding the what are the environmental responsibility of that particular organization or that particular business, and then managing the environmental impacts. That provides the guidelines that how to manage those impacts that particular organization, the processes of that organization is uh, taking part in. And then level four involves environment management program, that how would you improve the environment or how would you manage the environment means that the ecosystem of the area. And the level five, the last level, is continual environmental improvement. Obviously, all of the work, all of the hard work from level one to level four should not go to waste, and it should be continuously improved. It should be continuously monitored. So this is the level five of the Green Dragon. Then we have another standard, that is British Standard BS 8555. Uh, 2016, and it helps the organization improve their environmental performance by providing a way to build an environment management system. As you can see that all of these standards are actually aiming at what? Providing or building up environment management system, that is EMS. Now, the British standard is actually a more manageable approach, and it is more manageable for who obviously the large enterprises, the large business bodies, they have financial resources, they have employees, they have manpower to work for the environment management system. But this British standard is actually aiming or to have a more the aiming that the environment management system should be more manageable approach for small to medium sized enterprises, or are SMEs. And they have the choice to stop at any stage, but obviously if they want to keep going, it puts them on track to achieve the requirements of ISO 14001, which is International Image Standard. Okay. And it helps organization obviously achieve regulatory requirements and demonstrate to stakeholders. Stakeholders are what, as already mentioned, that everyone involved in that particular process, could be government, could be consumers, could be local community, everyone, that they are giving consideration to the environmental impact. This standard also help provide guidelines to manage resources and changes in the circumstances. For example, a process has changed or a resource distribution has changed. So it is also providing guidelines to how to tackle those problems. It also helps develop their business while reducing the environmental impact and decreasing waste, for example, and saving energy, as the previously mentioned standards also do that. Also, it is helping the organization to become more innovative, and it help the improve management system processes. And obviously it is helping to enhance the corporate reputation among investors, customers, and public. As you are aware that nowadays it is very essential for the organizations to be environmental friendly. If we are following a clothing brand, we are looking for the sustainable products, right? We are looking for the sustainable clothes, we are looking for the sustainable in everyday life. Like for example, if an industry is for example using paper bag instead of the plastic bag, obviously we would go for the paper bag or the recyclable or the reusable bags. So this is how the corporate reputation for following the environmental management system would enhance their reputation would enhance, obviously. Then we have eco management and audit scheme, EMAS. It is actually what a voluntary environment management instrument developed by the European Commission for the organization. It is only applicable to the European countries, EU, and it helps the organization to evaluate and report and improve their environmental performance. It actually it has a purpose to promote the continuous environmental improvement within organization. By how? By obviously implementing the environmental management system, that all of these standards are aiming for the environment development and implementation of the environment management system. And the basic framework for the EMAS include: number one, access to the environmental impact. What this involves, like identification of the environmental aspects and understanding how the activity of that particular organization or the production of their products or the services are affecting the environment. Then we have establishment of the environmental management system, establishment of EMS, that organizations develop and implement procedures and processes to manage the environmental impact effectively. Like, for example, setting the targets and objectives that are environmental friendly, establishing the responsibilities to various level of the employees, like to various leaders, to the various managers, etc. And then achieving the compliance, that is, it helps the organization comply with the relevant environmental regulation and requirements by ensuring they have appropriate procedures in the place. And obviously engagement of the stakeholders is very essential, and this particular standard encourage the organization to communicate openly with the stakeholders, including employees, customers, regulators, public, and everyone. And the lastly, as I already mentioned, that all of this hard work should not go to waste, and continuous improvement in the EMAS or the environment management system is necessary as per every these environmental standards. Now, we have discussed that why environmental management is important, why, but how to check or study the impacts of the activities, like if an organization is working or is producing a product, then how would the organization know that it is impacting that this and that aspect of the nature, this and that aspect of the environment? So it's actually involves the scientific process, the basic scientific process that involved in every discovery, that is involved in used in every research, that is mm, the set of principles that set of sorry steps that you are seeing on your screens. Number one is observation. Obviously the organization would first observe, like gathering information using the senses, or could use scientific tools, or could use instrument, that what is happening. That, for example, if a fertilizer company needs to know that what are the impacts of its activities on the surrounding area, it would use a particular instruments to check the air pollution of that area. Scientific rules. First step is observation, obviously. Then observation is actually what a starting point. You observe a thing and then you go for the next step. Then they develop a testable hypothesis. Like, for example, they have noticed and observed and pattern that from this function or this process of industry, we are observing, for example, a very bad odor, for example, in the air. They have observed the bad odor, they have used the instruments to check that what could be the cause of bad odor. Like, for example, if there is a leakage of methane, for example, so they would check the meters, they will use the meters or scientific tools to check that what sort of leakage is occurring, and then they would develop a testable hypothesis that what could be the phenomena that is causing. And after developing a hypothesis, they would design they would predict and then design an experiment that if what if for example this particular process is releasing methane into the environment, so let's check that which unit or which chamber is releasing that. So they would go for some experiments that by using those chambers or the unit of the industrial processes one by one, they would experiment that from where this leakage is happening or why this leakage is happening, etc. And then they would analyze the data, collected data. Maybe they could use a statistical method if requires. They could use uh, any way. Depends on the process, depends on the hypothesis that what sort of method of analysis they would be used, and then they would conclude that either their hypothesis was right, either their prediction was right, or they need to go try this whole process again by rejecting the hypothesis. And this is the process actually of making conclusion that after the data analysis you would conclude that either your hypothesis or your prediction was right or either it was wrong, and you need to do the experiment, do the to make a new hypothesis, you need to do the experiment again, and then you need to do the data analysis again. Now, importance of environmental management, why it is important for to manage the environment, and how can you improve the environment management. These are the steps that you can see on your screens. Evaluation of impact, obviously environmental management, without the management, environment management, you would not be able to detect, an organization or a firm or a business would not be able to detect that what is causing the impact, or what is causing the impact to that, for example death of the animals in that particular area. For example, we have a dyeing industry, we have a textile industry, and they're dumping their waste into the nearby river, and they're observing the death of the local livestock. So they need to evaluate the impact. That is why environmental management is necessary, plus cost saving. As I already mentioned, for example, if you have a leakage in a system, in a processing system or a unit, obviously it is not only damaging the environment, local environment, not affecting the local people, but it is also uh, causing cost effects as well. Obviously the fuel leakage would require more and more fuel, it would be very costly. So cost saving is saving the cost. For to save the cost, environment management is an essential. And for the evaluation of impact and cost saving, what the organization can do, process efficiency, like by improving the efficiency of their existing processes, they could be optimizing their performance of the existing processes. For example, by minimizing the raw material use of raw material, minimizing the energy usage or the production of the waste. They can also change the design, the product design, redesign the product so as to reduce the amount of resources it contains while still maintaining the level of the services. They can also go for the waste disposal activities of their organization. For example, improving process efficiency that would reduce the amount of waste, or if the waste has been produced, then find innovative ways of using that waste and making money from them. For example, the steel industries are selling coal and the coal and the extra their waste material to many industries as a raw material for various purposes. Then they can also think of the infrastructure, that what type of machinery, what type of unit they are preparing, what is the building, how their transport mechanism or the transport facility is being operated. They can think about that, and obviously packaging and transport. Also, because of the environmental management, thinking about it or acting upon it would ensure the legislative compliance, And it is the environmental management also helps making ensuring that the stakeholders priorities are considered by the organizations. And obviously market opportunity would increase. Obviously you will go for the innovative ways of producing your product, so you would have more market opportunities as compared to the conventional methods. Now, huh, now to undertake now what are the environmental management tools and techniques that would help an organization to manage the environment? What could be? uh, Number one is environmental policy. It is actually what a document that clearly sets out the overall aims and intention of a firm or a company concerning the environment. For example, the company, for example, if we have a company, for example, we have a fertilizer company, obviously it would have a different environmental policy as compared to, or the aims or the sets out intentions concerning to the environment as compared to the textile industry. So it depends on the organization to organization, company to company, business to business, that what kind of environmental policy they would make. It is most often the first step taken by the firms who wish to undertake the environment management. Then the second is building an environmental management system. Environment management system, or EMS. EMS enables a firm or a company to manage its environmental affairs in a planned and systematic way. You have made, or organization has made environmental policy, that is what it intends to do in terms of the environmental protection, and then based on that policy they would be creating an environmental management system in a systematic and a planned way. It would help identify ways of improving its environmental performance that most benefits its business performance as well. Obviously we are not gonna look for the losses, right, in order to manage the environment. We would obviously follow the steps that would not only benefit the environment but also the benefit the business performance or the profits. But these two tools have obviously disadvantages or drawbacks as well. um, Building environmental policy, building a proper environmental management system is a burden on small business because it requires resources, it requires manpower, it requires specific training of the employees or leaders. Also, it is creating some unintended intended consequences, like for example rebound effect. For example, uh, efficiency improvement in one process could lead to increase in consumption or a production rate of another process. Also, policy of one impact may overlook or ignore the other impact. For example, if one process, we are building a process that leakage of this particular gas is dangerous or harmful for the environment, and we are creating a policy for this, but we are ignoring another consequences or another smaller aspect of that organization which could cause a greater damage in the future. And obviously this EMS and environmental policy documentations can also result to the greenwashing. Greenwashing is what is the concept that we have previously discussed, that that organizations are not genuinely working to improve the environment, but they are actually just claiming that they are doing work for the environment. That, for example, if an organization might have an environmental policy in a documented form, and they have environmental management system in a documented form, and they are telling people that they are going through this process to manage the local environment, local ecosystem, but they are actually not doing so. They have only things on documentation, but they are not actually doing this genuinely. So these building the environmental policy, environment management system also could leads to the concept of greenwashing. Next tool is environmental auditing. Now, environmental auditing is what is a tool to check either a firm or an organization is doing what it should be doing. For example, an organization is going for a waste management practice, right? So the environmental audit would tell the firm that the organization waste management practices are actually in accordance with the industry sector's best practice guidelines, meaning that it is telling that what it is doing, should it be doing, is it right or is it wrong, the process is wrong or the process is right, etc. Now the ISO 14001 requires, it makes mandatory, it makes essential that an audit need to be undertaken to check whether the firm's EMS, environment management system, meets its requirements, and same is true for the EMAS. Now the next tool is, after auditing, after you have made an environment management system, then you would audit that either what you are doing is right or wrong. Then you would go for the environmental indicators. Those are actually the indicators that allow the firm to measure both its environmental performance and its effort to improve the performance. What are the indicators? What are the results, or what are the chances, or what are the things that are indicating that they need to improve this particular sector of an organization or a processing unit or not? Now, these two tools also have some disadvantages. Like, for example, it could be disrupted if not conducted properly. For example, auditing is not done by properly trained auditors, so it could be a nuisance, or it could be disruptive for the leaders or the managers or the employees in that particular industry or the organization. And it is also tedious. Obviously, you are auditing, you need to audit, for example, need to audit every month internal audit, and every year external audit, or even if the duration is 6 months, it is tedious, right? Like piling up the documents, writing up the documents, and working on this tedious task. So it is actually quite tedious task for many organizations and many people. Then next tool is EcoBalance. Now, what EcoBalance does is it records the various raw materials, energy resources, products, and waste entering, held within, and leaving the company over a specified period of time. Actually, what it's telling is, it is a record of a company's physical input, stock, raw material, and knowing what's coming out, what are the products, what are the waste, and what is the environmental impact of all those raw materials, inputs and outputs, and the products and resources, etc. It's actually a record, right? So knowing all these things, like what are the raw materials, what are the inputs of the processes, what sort of energy materials we are using, what are the resources, what are the products, and what are the waste. If we know all these things properly, then obviously it would make the impact assessment easy, that we will be able to pinpoint the what did we do wrong in what particular area. For example, if the raw materials were faulty, that is why the processes later on give out the faulty products, or if the raw material was faulty, for example, it is creating more waste as compared to the non-faulty raw material. Then we have life cycle assessment. It is related to the EcoBalance concept of EcoBalance. Obviously, it is a tool for identifying and assessing the various environmental impacts associated with a particular product. It takes a cradle to grave approach. What it does is actually that what goes into the unit of processing, for example, what type of raw material the organization is using, what type of product did that raw material produce, and what would be the use of that product, and what would be the end of that product. That's, for example, if it's a textile industry, then what would be the chemical that they are inputting, they are using to dye the clothes, and then what type of clothes they are making. For example, is it a pure cotton cloth, or it is a mixed polymer cloth, and what kind of people would be using, and how this particular cloth would be discarded into the environment, and what would be the consequences of the product degradation, or either it is able to degrade naturally, or it is not able to degrade naturally, either it is causing groundwater pollution by the process of leaching or not. This is actually the life cycle assessment. It is also one of the major tools to assess the environment management system. But also, just like any other aspect of any other tool, these two also have disadvantages, like they are tedious, obviously. Going through from the start to the end of the product, obviously monitoring it regularly makes it tedious, makes it nuisance for many people. Also, it requires experts. Properly trained people are needed to carry out the life cycle assessment, to carry out the eco balance, to carry out the calculations in each and every step of the process. And also, the concept is difficult to explain to non-expert. The people who are non-experts, people who are not properly trained, or people who are not linked to the processing unit of that particular organization, it is very difficult to explain all the complexities of life cycle assessment and eco balances. Next is tool is environmental labeling. Now, environmental labeling is what? These are the scheme awards. There's a scheme that awards the environmental label to those products that are judged to be less harmful to the environment than others within the same product group. You might have heard of the eco labels, right? For example, we have eco stars on our computers. That means that they have attained or they have been awarded by that particular EcoStar label that their computer screens are environmentally safe or less harmful to the environment as compared to the other products. Now, the firms that wish for their products to be considered for a label must apply to the scheme organization and then show them that how their product is environmentally safe. Only then they would be able to get the eco label. Then we have environmental reporting. Obviously, we have been doing everything. We have been making policy. We have been making or organizing this environmental management system and doing everything. We need to develop a report of all the processes that we have done. We have done the auditing. We have attained the label. We have get the life cycle assessment. Obviously, we need to report that what we did throughout the year. It could be yearly, it could be 6 monthly, etc. So issuing environmental report can improve our firm's public image and lead to the improved relationship with the stakeholders. Obviously, you are building a report, and then if you publicize that report, it would benefit the reputation of that particular organization, that people would probably buy more from them, that they are complying with the regulatory environmental legislation or practices or laws. But also, these two also have backdrops like resource intensive. Obviously, for environmental labeling, for reporting, obviously you need more people, you need more manpower, you need more trainings, etc. The complexity, the whole process is complex, and it might lack transparency, that either the firm is reporting the findings transparently or not. Either the environmental reporting they have made is genuine or not. And obviously, the greenwashing, we are getting the environmental label by showing the label by labeling the schemes, the organized scheme organization. For example, we are showing that our product are very environmental same, but later on, after attaining the label, the company starts to go for the environmental unfriendly raw material or the processes again to maximize its profits. So it would lead to greenwashing as well. Now, we have been discussing through and through that every standard required the organization to go for the environment management system, EMS, do an EMS, make an EMS, etc. So let's briefly discuss that what is actually the EMS. EMS actually is a set of interrelated elements that function together to achieve the objective of effective environment management. Again, I would say that EMS, what sort of EMS an organization would go for depends on the functions of that organization, would depends on the legislative authorities, the rules and regulation of that particular. For example, the rules and regulation, environmental rules and regulations are different in Pakistan, they are different in Saudi Arabia, they are different in Europe. And similarly, the organizations, every organization have different processing units, they have different use of raw materials, they have different uh, people, employees, ethnicity of the people, obviously. So the culture of every organization is different. So the what sort of environment management system an organization is supposed to carry out or build or to perform depends on the activities, depends upon the area they are operating on, and the local community, and what sort of stakeholders they are engaging with. But the overall process, the steps remains the same. Now, a common model for environmental management system has been formulated by the International Organization for Standard, that is ISO, and it's actually the common model, which includes what? Number one step is building a environmental policy, a draft that shows the commitment to the, for example, pollution prevention, pollution reduction, compliance to the legislation. A organization needs to develop a draft, a written a document stating that what sort of environmental compliance they are ready to comply with, and what sort of commitment to the environment they are ready to go for. Then, based on that policy, they would set the objectives and targets relating to based on those policies. Obviously, for example, if a organization is committing itself for the pollution prevention, it would set the objectives and it would plan for the what sort of steps it would take to prevent the pollution. Next step is implementation operation. Obviously, you have made the policy and then you have planned all the activities that this is how you are gonna uh, prevent, for example, the pollution discharge, for example, into the water. Then obviously you need to implement all those targets, all those steps, all those plans, and implement into the operation, into the processes, into the each and every unit of processes in the organization. And after the implementation, you need to check either your planning is working with the systems you are operating on, either the plan you have made is beneficial for your organization as well as to the environment. So you need to continuously check the systems, and in case the your planning, some steps of the planning failed, or even if whole of the plan, whole of the objectives fail, then you need to go for the corrective action. That what sort of corrective actions need to be implement so that the objectives of the environmental policies are being yes. Now, the last final step that is common of the common model of the EMS is management review. Obviously, you have made the policy, planned, the implemented, and then checked, monitored repeatedly, and you have done the corrective action as well. And then you need to uh, review all of those processes again and again. As I already said in the start, that the uncertainty principle, that the social understanding and the environmental understanding is uncertain because of its ever-changing nature. So it is essential to review whole of the process again and again, that if for example, if a climate of that particular area changes, then you need to process all of the you need to review the whole process again, that either the goals and objectives that you set for your environmental policy are beneficial or accurate for that particular climate that has developed this year, or the weather pattern, changing in the weather pattern, either your objectives or the operations that you have changed, or you have innovated some particular, for example, processes, either they are suitable for that particular change in the society or the particular change in the environment. So review is most important. Now, during the planning, I said that organization needs their environmental objective and environmental or target, right? So let me briefly describe that what are the environmental objective and what are the environmental target. Now, objective is what? Overall goal that arise from the policy, and it is quantified wherever possible. It is actually, objective is what is actually the overall goal of the organization, that is the main goal of an organization, of a particular organization, that we are gonna go for. An environmental target is what? A detailed performance requirement, and it arises from the objectives, and then you need the environmental targets to achieve those objectives. First, you build an environmental objective, right? You have to make a goal or objective that this is the end goal from the policy, from the environmental policy that particular organization has developed. And then using that objective as a endpoint, you need to set some environmental targets, a set of rules or set of steps that you need to comply or to need to take action in order to reach the environmental objective that you have reached. Now, how should a firm go about setting up environmental management system? For example, and the objective of an organization, the policy states that it needs to reduce the energy required in the manufacturing process. Okay, so it would obviously make targets. And the target, for example, let's say that the target is 10% reduction compared with the previous year. Every year they have set, they would set their main objective is to reduce the energy required for the manufacturing process, and then they would set targets for every year, that every year they need to reduce the energy required to about 10% from the previous year. And then what it would do? Obviously, they would make EMS, as I already discussed. They would make environmental management system. And then after, based on what? ISO 14001, for example, guidelines. Okay. Then the firm can improve its environmental performance and at the same time ensure the legal compliance, reduce its environmental risk, and achieve the cost saving. However, ISO 14000 is just a guidance document, right? It's not actually the proper, what can I say, accreditation or not. It's not actually a proper accreditation. It's just a guidance policy that you need to take this step, this step, this step. So we cannot simply following ISO 14000 family, the company or an organization can say that they are complying with the environmental management system properly according to the legislation, according to the laws, according to the rules made by that particular area or the government. So the company needs the certification by a third-party accreditation that is registered under the EMAS, for example, registered under ISO 14001, or that is registered under all these standards that we have discussed. So that would get, for example, we have British Standard International, we have British Assessment Bureau, we have also eco labels, for example, if we want to get the labels that our product is environmental friendly, etc. So we need a third party accreditation to certify we or the organization actually to certify that their system or their environmental management system is in accordance with the ISO 14000 family. Now this is this is a table that I found in a paper that I would be sharing later. It's actually the description of the environmental aspects when making a report, that the criteria, actually the aspects that the organization needs to study are significant or not, because ISO 14001 it requires firms to identify, obviously, the significant aspects. ISO 14001 requires that the organization needs to identify that what type of the processes or the aspects are significant, but they haven't given any accordance or any typical guidelines how to do so. So it is actually, as I already mentioned, that it is up to the individual firm to find a method for doing so, because based on their particular principles, based on their particular environment, based on their particular engagement with the stakeholders, obviously their EMS changes. So these are the some common environmental assessment aspects that organization needs to give in the reports. This is what scale 1 to 4, and description is if the aspect or the effects are negligible, that means they are very small environmental impact and low probability of occurrence, they would say that their aspect or their impact is negligible. And if the abnormal conditions would cause breach of legislation, for example, and it would impact the probability of occurrence in a small amount, they would say the impact is minor in a report. And if the activity has impact under normal conditions, is breaching the legislation, is also affecting the probability of occurrence, and it is the probability of occurrence are moderate or high, it means that the impact is significant. And in case the activity under abnormal condition is a breach of legislation, that the activity, for example, is breaching the legislation, breaching the laws of the particular area, particular environment, so that would mean the impact, the environmental aspect or the environmental impact of that particular activity is what? Major. Now, okay. Now these are some of the steps that are for maximum environment economic benefits, obviously, and to help comply with the EMS or environmental management system requirements. Some of these elements should be included in the business. That would help getting to know the performance and improvement by those industries. Number one is environmental policy. Obviously, I have discussed already. Number two is environmental requirements and voluntary initiatives. This aids the employees understanding their roles in meeting environmental requirements, and what are the requirements, what are the duties of each and particular unit of employee or sector of employee in based on the environment. What would be the identify the management and manufacturing practices that affect the organization's ability to meet the requirements. Identification of all the practices, identification of every task by the organization would help deliver environmental performance and would aid improvement in the environmental performance by an organization. Number three is setting objectives and targets that comply with the environmental requirements, that are continuously improving in regulated and non-regulated areas, that are helping prevention of the pollution, and they make those objectives specific to the organizations. For example, if you have a textile industry, you have to make specific objectives and targets for the specific sector of the textile industry. You cannot just copy the rules and regulation, environmental policy, and objective and targets of a petroleum industry for the textile industry. Set time frames to meet the objectives and update the objectives and environmental requirements evolve. Number three, ensure the organization has personnel and resources needed to meet the objective. This is very important. Obviously, if you do not have the proper amount of employees, if you do not have the properly trained employees, the whole the process would be meaningful, right? So the proper delegation of the responsibility, proper trained people, proper instruments, proper resources are needed to carry out the best environmental performance. And the organization needs to establish a procedure to ensure the proper, for example, waste management hierarchy is followed. simple procedure should be developed so that it is easy to measure and report the environmental impacts of those procedures, those processes. Now, documentation of the procedure is very important, because documenting all those procedures, documenting all those processes would help identify and correcting and obviously preventing the mistakes in the future. Develop an emergency procedure to minimize or eliminate adverse environmental impact associated with the accidents or emergency. You need to develop emergency procedures as well in case situation go haywire. I have been saying again and again, training, awareness, competence is very essential. If you do not have trained personnel, if you do not have trained employees, if you do not have trained managers and leaders, all of the process would go to waste. So mandatory trainings should be made mandatory or essential. Then using life cycle analysis to identify the impact of the products to make the environment. Life cycle analysis, that what sort of raw material are you using, what sort of energy you are using, what sort of product that particular raw material is producing, the usage, what with the end of the product. It is essential to improve the environment performance for an organization. And obviously, for future evaluation, document steps taken. Documentation is necessary. Obviously, as I already mentioned previously, that in order to go for the corrective and preventive action, documentation is necessary. And continuous evaluation and improvement, as I already mentioned, that the ever-changing process, the uncertainties, it is essential for an organization to go for the continuous evaluation, continuous improvement, monitoring, so that the environmental performance remains best. Now, environmental performance is a measure of how well an organization or a country manages impact, right? So all these steps that we have discussed previously, these include these four major principles. Actually, what PDCA cycle, you must have heard of it: plan, do, check, act. I would just roughly go through it, that all these processes that we have discussed in the EMS, and how to evaluate the environmental performance, how to improve the environmental performance, all of these processes include this PDCA cycle, that is plan, do, check, act. What plan is what? Strategic plan. Involve assessing that what type of the organization, context of the organizations, and they use SWOT analysis, for example, the SWOT table, cost benefit analysis. This is how you are planning for any environmental. Then we after the planning, after you have done the proper plan, that would be the cost benefit analysis, what would be the negative aspect, what would be the positive aspects, etc. Then you would go for the operational implementation, that is what? Do. This stage moves from strategy to operational environment management and focuses on establishing specific processes, procedures of the environment management system. And it also includes like processes like emergency preparedness. For, as I previously mentioned, that they need to develop an extra procedure in case some uncertainty occurs. So all of these steps must be taken during this do process, that is operational implementation. And then we have check. What is that? It is actually the performance evaluation that includes monitoring, analysis, measurement, and evaluation of the performance, and you need to do it regularly. And after checking, obviously you would go for the improvement, and then cycle would continue, that after the improvement, after checking what sort of changes are needed, obviously you would again resume the cycle, and you would again act on the new discoveries, new analysis, new measurement, and you would go and the cycle would go on and on. Now, we have gathered everything. We have uh, done with the, we have made the environmental management plan, we have made policies, we have developed objectives, and we have also assessed or use a scientific process to get to know that what sort of impacts that our activities are inducing on the environment. But how to do all this? Like, this is too much information, right? So let's discuss some sort of that what type of data, or how you are managing the data, how you are gonna manage all of this, because understanding of the data, types of data, and how you're going to process each and every data is very essential. So let's go to this now. Environmental data includes what? Data related to the ecosystem, climate, and natural resources. And environmental data is important. Why? Because we need to understand the state of our planet, and we need to understand the impacts of our activities on the environment. Hence, it is essential to get a reliable data. So we need, because using this old data, we need to make decisions to promote the act of sustainability, to promote the act of conservation and overall well-being of the ecosystem. So it is necessary that we need to know that what sort of data and what would be the reliable data that we are using for our decision making. Now, on your screens, you are seeing the information pyramid, and it is showing us 4 type of data. At the bottom of the pyramid, we have primary data. Primary data is actually the raw data that is collected from the monitoring or the field activities. For example, the daily temperature or the rainfall measurement at a meteorological station, or various key pollutants in the air measured at a monitoring station at a particular time in a city. That is actually primary data, that is actually raw data, unprocessed data. Next comes analyzed data. This actually is the information that we get from the primary data. The data that has been analyzed, it has been screened for reliability and accuracy, and also it has been calculated, for example, average monthly temperature, or rainfall, average rainfall, or average concentration of the key pollutant at a specific time period. It is called analyzed data, that you have analyzed, you have the data, and you have built a specific pattern with that primary data. That is the analyzed data. Then we have indicator. Indicator is the data or information level that may be an aggregation of several statistics. After applying the statistics to the data, or it may be aggregation of statistics, we are applying many formulas on the analyzed data, or we are using some of the data. It is important in a sense that an indicator must indicate something. It actually provides purposeful information to the stakeholders about the status of the environment. For example, an indicator gives information on changes in a system, like, for example, rate of soil loss, which is an important indicator of the environmental stability in the arid and semi-arid region, for example, in Pakistan. So an indicator is what aggregation of the many statistical formulas applied on the primary data or analyzed data, and it is indicating something that our gathered data is indicating or applying that a particular effect is occurring or particular cause is happening. Then at the top of the pyramid, we have indices. It actually consists of aggregated indicator, and indices or index, right? So in terms of environmental information, the most common indices are those of water or air quality, which combines element of quantity and quality. Indices are actually what? Aggregation of indicators. That these include many indicators aggregation of indicators, and they, for example, for environmental information, we have indexes like water quality index. We have, right, those. We have air quality index. So this is the information pyramid. And what sort of information that we use this pyramid for in terms of environmental management system is what we gather data on climate change, like temperature, like rain or precipitation, gather data on humidity, wind pattern, etc. We gather data on the biodiversity, like a variety of the plants and animal species, how they are distributed, their genetic diversity, etc. Air and water quality, what is the quality of the water, what is the quality of the air, and what is the land use and land cover, that how the land is utilized and is consumed. Now, how do we get all the data? Obviously, at the observation, obviously, the only the scientific process, observation, building a hypothesis is not the only way of getting the data. For example, we cannot get the data of the whole region, for example, temperature of the whole region. So what are some of the reliable sources for obtaining that environmental data for an organization? Number one is statistical or informal surveys, like census or sample surveys, like of population, like for housing, for agriculture, like household employments, all these surveys, and they are available on the uh, websites of many governmental websites. For example, US Environmental Protection Agency, US EPA, has a wide variety of databases available to the public at their website. For example, they have consumer product category database containing the use of over 40,000 chemicals and their presence in different consumer product. Likewise, European Environmental Agency have a whole range of useful data sets and map, like annual average fraction loss of GDP from natural hazards. Similar is the case with Pakistan. You can find these data, this statistical information on many various websites, like the Bureau of EPA. We have EPA website. We have Energy Agency website, etc. Then you have remote sensing and thematic mapping. This includes the satellite image of the land use, water bodies, forest cover. I At the start of the session, I showed you a satellite image of the flood of 2022 in Pakistan. That was actually remote. That was the image taken by the satellite via remote sensing. It was actually made map. Okay, example, one of the example. Then we have scientific research and special research projects. We have scientific research articles available. We have scientific research publications available online that aids us getting reliable information. Then we have monitoring systems as well, like field monitoring stations. For example, we have water quality. We have for field monitoring system for air pollution, temperature, etc. So all these are the sources of the environmental data where you can get the reliable environmental data. Now you have gotten the data. Now, how you disseminate or distribute your data, your findings of your research? What would you do? How you have gotten the data? So how would you distribute the data? How would you tell the for example, general public about your finding? These are some of the steps that help the dissemination of the data. Number one is partnership with a grassroots organization. You need to partnership with the grassroots or the major organization. For example, collaborate with the big organization like United Nations, for example. You need to share and collaborate with them. You need to share your data with them, and then go on conferences, seminars, and press release, issuing a press release, etc., using their website to disseminate their data. Then you have public meetings. Same is the case with public meeting. You go to the people in the seminar, you go to the people in conferences, you discuss your data, you discuss your finding with the people, journal people, with the students, with the scientists all over the world. Social media, one of the most important way to distribute the data that has become nowadays. You can convey information to local people as well through the social media. Then we have distribution of the results booklet, like you can publish booklets, or you can publish like conference papers, or you can publish like magazines. You can publish your information into the scientific magazine as well, so that the general people or the stakeholders that are interested in your information, that are interested in your data, can get to know what are your findings. Now, how to process the data? You have gathered the data, but how are you going to process this? And how did you do all this? Like you have collected and you have shared the data, but how you're gonna manipulate the data, or how you can use it later on, or how you gonna store it? This is all included in the data processing. Now, the data processing or the data acquisition depends upon the type of the data. There are two types of data. We have qualitative and quantitative data. Non qualitative and data includes non-quantifiable traits like personal opinions, like behaviors, like quality, etc. And the quantitative obviously are related to the quantity or number or statistics, etc. So you have gathered the data, qualitative and quantitative data, depending upon what type of data you are gathering. And now how you're going to process the data, it also depends upon the what type of data you are getting. So how you're processing data, obviously that's depends upon the what type of data. For example, if you're collecting weather data, you would need access to the on-ground sensor or human reports or satellite observation. While if you are counting the number of fishes in a particular area, it would require a field data. So depending on the type of data, gathering of data, data processing, how you're gonna do it changes. Okay. Now, some of the common data collecting systems include monitoring station. I will just rapidly go through it. Okay, monitoring stations like sensors, meters for environmental factors like air, water quality, etc. We have remote sensing via drones. We have aerial surveys. We have satellite images for vegetation, deforestation, land use, etc. We have sampling and analysis. Like for example, we are going to a particular area to get the sample of soil, water, air, and biological specimens. And we have Internet of Things, and we have smart devices for the continuous monitoring and data collection from, for example, buildings, for example, infrastructure in urban areas. So these are some of the common data collecting systems. Next, after the collection, obviously, collection, you would analyze the data, and then you need to store the data for the future use. So data storage is actually what it could be in a form of magnetic, optical, or mechanical media that records and preserve the digital information for ongoing or future operations. And some of the ways to save the data includes database system, and you need to use robust database system, so that the system would be able to support large volume of data, large files of data. You have like thousands or millions of numbers in a data. For example, if for example you are recording the temperature changes in an area for a decade, obviously you need large spaces and robust database system. And you need to make sure that the data storage devices are secured, because you need to protect the sensitive information from unauthorized access or breaches. And obviously you need to keep a backup or recovery system as well, in case you lose the primary data storage device of yours. Then obviously you need to retrieve the data for the for example in future, for example after 5 years, for example after next year. So you need to make sure that for the data accessibility, for example, not only you, but for example, if I'm to go to a particular website to get the data of 1993 temperature changes in the whole year 1993. So I would go to the website where the data is easily accessible, where the data is present in a user-friendly interface, okay, and the access is easy. Also, the reporting tools that a particular website, particular organization, if you're working for them, you need to make sure that the reporting tools are able to generate customizable reports so that the stakeholders can understand the data and derive insights relative to their needs. And then obviously real-time data access should be made necessary so that the people can uh, timely get the data. For example, if they want to make a decision for their organization, if they want to make a decision for a particular legislative function, etc., especially in case of environment management situation. Now, for effective decision making and management, the organization need, now we have established that we have developed this environment management system, we have developed the ways to collect the data, etc. But then organization, for an effective decision making and management, the organization need confidence in itself that the processes and the practices that they have planned are delivering desired results in terms of sustainability. Because all of it was about sustainability, right? We have been discussing everything because we need sustainable development in our organization. So verification and assurance is very essential, and you can see the definitions of verification and assurance on your screens. The process of establishing whether information on the organization impact management practice or the performance is true and accurate is verification. And assurance is what is the process of evaluating an organization's information against a suitable criteria and standards. Like verification is what you're establishing that the information the organization is giving in their environmental management, the information their environmental management system is based on is true and accurate. And assurance is what you are actually evaluating this your information, the organization information, against a benchmark, against a known value of for example, if you are trying to mitigate carbon dioxide emissions, so you need to set a benchmark value either given by the legislative authority, or either by the literature, or either by international NGOs, organizations like United Nations, etc., etc. So by evaluating or by comparing your value with that benchmark value, you are assuring, an organization is assuring itself that the EMS, the information they have gathered, they are working on, is accurate, is effective. Now, organizations have their own verification and assurances processes. Third-party assurances like chartered accountants or certified bodies can also help with the assurance of an organization for their sustainable information, that their sustainable practices are reliable and accurate. So they need not only internal assurance, for example, in the form of auditors, they also need the third-party assurances and verifications as well. Now, just to the overview of today's lecture, that you are understanding the context, that what is the problem, why do we need environmental management system, and then you are assessing and comparing the trends with the benchmark. And then next step consists of the impact assessment, that what sort of impact your organization practices has on the environment, or the local environment, or the local community, or the local society. And then you're going to make a conclusion and hypothesis, and then again you are analyzing the conclusion and hypothesis of all the context, all the comparison with the benchmark, and then you are going to monitor and giving recommendation for the future environmental management practices, for either for the future generation or the future bosses of the company, or for the future processes of the company, or the okay. That's it for all. If you have any question, we have, I think, 2 or 3 minutes. before the ending of the session. Do you have any questions? All right. Mr. Zahid Mahmood, I hope today's session was up to your standards, or you were able to understand the concepts. I would again say that I would share this material on the WhatsApp group, and also the institute would also share the overall layout of the all the units that we are gonna discuss in the WhatsApp group in the PDF file. So I hope आपकी जो शिकायतें हैं वो आपकी जो आपकी concerns हैं वो सारे उसकी इनकी mitigation हो जाएगी. All right. I think that's it. Thank you for attending today's session. Allah Hafiz and have a good night. Allah Hafiz.